Hey, what is going on? It is 12 noon on Friday, which means it's time for this week's episode of State of Real Estate. My name is John Carissimo, and this show is brought to you by the Tampa School of Real Estate. We're here every single Friday, 12 noon, to help you understand the technical side of the industry. If you're not yet subscribed, hit that bell icon so you get notifications whenever it is that we have new content, so you don't miss out on any of this information to help you grow your real estate business. Because that's what we're primarily concerned with on Fridays for State of Real Estate. That's the theme, that's the topic, is how to mastermind to grow your real estate business. You know, the real world stuff that actually makes you some money. And what we're talking about today is something that's extremely intimidating to most new agents, myself included when I was a new agent, and boy, do I have a story to share with you. It's not that long entertaining, but definitely a moral of the story for you guys to keep in mind as you start your real estate career. So I want to share that with you, as well as helping you get a better understanding of the role of the contract and just some basic things. We're not going to spend an hour going through every detail and every word of the contract, but a lot of the things aren't necessarily taught in those more in-depth contract classes where you're learning to understand the contract, but just the general purposes of it and how it's typically used in the day-to-day real estate profession. So that's what we're going to be covering today. We'll be talking a little about the buyer contract, the purchase and sale contract, listing contracts. Stick with us. We got a great show for you today. I'm John Carissimo. You're watching State of Real Estate.
You are watching
State of Real Estate. Every Friday at 12 noon Eastern Time. Grow your real estate business. You're watching State of Real Estate. Hey, welcome back to this week's episode of State of Real Estate. My name is John Carissimo. The show is brought to you by the Tampa School of Real Estate every Friday, 12 noon Eastern Time. If you missed the beginning, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any of this content we have for you guys every single week. But what we're talking about today in this week's topic to help you grow your real estate business is understanding contracts. And specifically from the perspective of a new agent. Because once you've already done a few contracts, you start to learn that these aren't quite as big of a deal as they're made out to be. So let's talk about your pre-licensing course. Let's rewind back to your pre-licensing course when you first officially learn about real estate contracts. Now maybe you've bought and sold houses before, maybe you have used some real estate contracts, I'm sure most of you have, but even then, did you truly understand that document and all the capabilities and possibilities and potential and opportunities that exist within that document? That's where we come in as the real estate professional. And so going back to your pre-licensing course, when you first learn about these contracts, you're learning the very, very basics of that they have to, certain ones have to be in writing and signed. Not even all of them, but certain ones have to be in writing and signed. Get everything in writing and signed, even if the law doesn't require it. You'll thank me later on that one. But other basic things like having competent parties, offer and acceptance, it being legal. What are you really learning about? Oh, and then you say, okay, well then you start to learn about the different types of contracts. You learn the 4 main types of contracts we could assist buyers and sellers with and their basic purpose. The 2 employment contracts we have are the listing agreement and the buyer brokerage agreement. That employs us either with the seller or the buyer. We'll talk about each of these a little bit more in depth in a moment. I just want to recap all of them here. So we have those 2 contracts. One of those most agents typically use. The other one doesn't really get used too often, but it is still available to you. And then on the other side, for the contracts we have between our clients, not between us and the client, but between a buyer and a seller, like our purchase and sale contract. It's another contract, very important. And then there's a 4th contract you also learn about in your pre-licensing course, which honestly, as a real estate professional, you probably won't use it too much. Maybe if you're working with investors who, I'll be honest, aren't the most serious investors. That's called an option contract. An option contract, and why I say maybe the people using an option contract aren't serious, because it's the least serious out of all the contracts. It's the least of a contract out of any of the contracts because it's only one-sided, it's unilateral. So again, that's another one that you don't typically use. So getting to the 2 contracts, in Florida at least, that you're most likely going to use most often, number 1 is going to be that purchase and sale contract. Because whether you're working with buyers or sellers, you're going to be using that contract. whether they're buying or selling. So almost any type of real estate you do, aside from leasing and property management, you're probably going to be using that purchase and sale contract. Now, when I say that purchase and sale contract, there's actually two of them available. So for your purchase and sale contracts, there's a Florida Realtors one as well as a FAR Bar one, and you could read through them. Overall, they're fairly similar, but different wording, different layouts. It depends on where you're located of which one might be more typically used, and honestly, from what I see, what it really comes down to in the real world, not necessarily the minor differences in the contract, but what's more customary or standard in the area. What contract are other realtors also using? Because with these contracts, when we talk about contracts, a lot of people get intimidated by the word contract. And they imagine these big 20-page documents, and a purchase and sale contract with the necessary addendums probably is going to be close to 20 pages, if not longer. But if you're using these Florida Realtor contracts, so that's one of the benefits from joining the Association of Realtors, is they have all these beautiful little fill-in-the-blank contracts for us. So we don't have to sit there and write a contract from scratch or hire an attorney every time we need a contract. We could use that fill-in-the-blank contract. And here's the other part that's great about the fill-in-the-blank contract. When we're just filling in the blanks, the only thing that's going to be different are the blanks. All the stuff that's not blanks that we're filling in is the same on every contract when we're using the same contract. Literally the only difference is the blanks that we're filling in. And even again, when you compare the Florida Realtors contract with the Florida Realtors and Bar contract, there's the just Florida Realtors and then one that's a collaboration between the Florida Realtors and the Florida Bar. Yes, there are some differences between them, but overall, you could achieve pretty much the same thing with either of these two types of contracts. So again, that comes down to really what people are just more used to, because when a seasoned real estate professional is looking at these contracts, they're not reading every last line of the contract, at least not when it's a fill-in-the-blank contract. There's no need to reread the same lines again and again and again and again looking for changes when there's never going to be any changes because we're using the exact same contract. So that's, again, the benefit of using these fill-in-the-blank contracts. And this has slowly been adopted over the years of kind of standardizing this. And yes, there are still options that are available out there. Even if you're using the Florida Realtors contract, you have the standard contract versus an as-is contract. Now, another big misconception there, just a quick one that probably was even touched on in your pre-licensing course. All the as-is contract does, in comparison to a standard sale contract, the regular sale contract, whatever you want to call it, just a normal sale contract, an as-is contract has wording in there that basically says it's being sold as is and we're not going to make any repairs. We don't intend to make any repairs, basically. That's really what a contract is, regardless of whatever that contract implies. It's always saying that we intend to. Not that we're going to do something. It'll require maybe a court to force us to do something according to that contract. The contract is just basically what our intentions are of doing these things. And yes, these intentions create legal obligations to them. But the point I'm trying to make here with all this is these contracts are not quite as difficult as they seem, especially when you're using the fill-in-the-blank contracts. Now, if you start dealing with home builders are using their own contracts, almost always. And they're way more pages. I mean, you might be talking 50 to 100 pages for a builder contract. But the good news is, if you're selling a new construction home, you've got that agent that works for the builder that's helping them through this more complicated new construction process. So you're not on your own there. And even in a resale type of transaction where you're not buying from a builder, you always have your broker or your team leader, your mentor, whoever it is in your organization that's there to help you out in situations like this. Now, getting back to these contracts and when you would use them. So the sale contracts, that's for buyers, sellers, whenever somebody even wants to just make an offer on a property. Even if they just want to make an offer on the property, you typically just fill out the contract. And you just fill it all out as you intend. Because remember, your contract is basically what your intentions are. And then eventually you agree upon those intentions, and then you act upon those intentions. And if somebody doesn't act upon the intentions that they agreed to, well, that's when we talk about breach of contract and all the things that could go along with that. But that's usually not an issue, especially when everybody understands what the implications are related to this contract. And when we're using the same fill-in-the-blank contract, a lot of the stuff is what they call boilerplate. You might have heard that term before, boilerplate. It means standard. It means it doesn't change. So again, going back to these fill-in-the-blank contracts, we're looking at the blanks. Now, what are the things that you're finding in the blanks? Well, if we're talking about a purchase contract, obviously one of the most important ones is the sale price of how much this person wants to pay for the property. And again, when you make an offer, you're typically doing that right on the contract, where you'll just write in what you want this contract to look like. You sign off on it, initial all the pages, sign off it, send it over to the seller, and if they agree, all they've got to do is sign off on it, and now you've got a contract. So that's typically how the offer process works. Now, you could just verbally say an offer. That verbal offers still have to be presented according to the law and all that stuff you learn about in your pre-licensing courses, unless you have maybe some specific disclosure that says no verbal offers and require everything to be in writing. Maybe something I would recommend, but that's up to you. But now with a verbal offer, we can't immediately turn something spoken into a contract. We have to take that, what's spoken, put it in writing, get the signatures, and then it becomes a contract. So that's why most of the time when you're making offers, you're doing it right on the contract, so that way all they've got to do is sign. Or if they don't like something, let's say they don't agree about the price. A lot of times what you can do is just cross that out, write in a new price, and initial next to it, and everybody initials next to that amendment to the contract, to that offer. And if this goes back and forth enough times, you might just draft up a whole brand new fresh one. But don't stress out too much about these contracts. Now, yes, they are important. Yes, they do mean a lot. And yes, you do need to take them seriously. And so here's what I would recommend as steps for you to get you more comfortable and more familiar. So the Association of Realtors, they have all kinds of little trainings they do to walk you through the nitty-gritty details of these contracts. Most Association of Realtors usually have some sort of training about how to use their contracts. Again, they're the realtors fill in the blanks contracts. So they usually have the stuff to explain to you about that. Your brokerage probably has some training of maybe whatever addendums they might require, whatever process, whatever template they have based on what type of client this may be. But aside from all of that, there's something for me, and I do have that story to share with you guys about when I first started in real estate and how it relates with contracts. But what I would recommend is download yourself a copy of this contract. Once you join the Association of Realtors, you could go download one right off of your MLS portal. Download a copy of this contract and start looking through it. Start reading through it. You're going to be surprised to find out that it's not quite as complicated. Now, yes, there's probably going to be some things that don't make sense, that you don't understand, some words you might have to look up. But if you don't understand this contract, how do you expect your clients to trust you? Either they've got to understand it fully themselves, which they should, and a lot of times that comes from us helping them understand this. But if we don't understand that, how are they going to understand it? And if they don't understand it and we don't understand it, how are we going to get into a contract if no one even understands the contract? And so look, going back to when I started in real estate, I had that view that I was just explaining. Okay, you come out of pre-licensing, you learn what you learn about the contract, and as you've heard me say many times, if you watched any of our videos before, go take your post-licensing course as soon as possible, because that'll teach you a lot more real-world stuff. I didn't do that when I started. I waited till the last minute to do my post-licensing right before the deadline and kicked myself about all the stuff I wish I learned 2 years ago, or however long it was between my deadlines. So read through this contract. Literally, I was afraid, I was hesitant. I would look for excuses not to show homes. Why? I was terrified. What was I terrified of? That they would want to buy one of these houses that I was showing them. Why was I terrified of that? That's literally the thing I should be chasing after, and I was scared of it. And in hindsight, I was terrified of it because I didn't know how to make an offer. I didn't know what the contract looked like or what I put where. So I should have went through and read through that. And eventually that's what I did. When I finally had that moment, I'm like, oh crap, I got to make an offer. So I started quickly reading through that and trying to figure out what it all meant. And luckily, it started making sense. Now, it probably would have made a lot more sense if I had a level head and I wasn't stressed out about trying to figure out how to fill out this contract, which is why, again, my recommendation is, even if you don't have business yet, that contract is your goal. Without a contract, we do not get paid. If we don't have a contract, there will be no closing. Now everyone focuses on the closing and, oh yeah, I want to get a closing, I need to get a closing, but hey, guess what? You're not going to get a closing without a contract, so focus on getting a contract. Now, how do you get a contract? You got to know the contract. You got to not be afraid of the contract. Read the contract. Ask your broker about the contract. Take the training classes your Association of Realtors offers about these contracts. Call into the Florida Association of Realtors legal hotline if you have questions about the contract. The resources are there for you to understand this contract. And look, you probably will need to use some of these resources to fully understand this contract. And that goes for everyone, no matter what your intelligence level is. I don't care how smart you are, there's going to be things that you don't understand, that you don't know about in this contract. Not because the contract is complicated, but that you don't understand necessarily the context of why this part is important. Why is this little section here? Why is that inspection period, again, to pick something randomly out of that contract? We already talked about the purchase price in our sale contracts, but what about the inspection period? Is that important? I mean, do they want to do an inspection? Yeah, I guess they do want to do an inspection. No, they don't want to? Okay, I guess we don't need to worry about filling that out. Look, that inspection clause is important. Not because it's there, not because of how many days it has, but because of what it allows. It allows the buyer not only to conduct an inspection, because they could still do an inspection without that inspection clause. The inspection clause is not there to grant permission to do an inspection. The inspection clause is there to protect the buyer in the event that they want to cancel the contract after they do the inspection, granted that it's within that same time period in there. And if you read through the lines in there, you'll start to figure that out on your own. And maybe after you take the training or talk to your broker or call the legal hotline or one of the above, you fully understand what that means. Or maybe you don't have to do any of that to understand what that means, because maybe you're just watching our YouTube channel here and you're seeing us talking about it. And it's not just that part. There's the escrow money we could go into this discussion about. We could talk about the financing and filling out that clause in there. We could talk about who's paying for closing, and a lot of these little blanks. Again, there's not many of them. Even in these contracts that might end up being like 20 pages long, maybe there's like 20 or 30 blanks that we're filling out in these contracts. Maybe not even that much, depending on what contract and how detailed this transaction is, depending on the property. So that's your purchase and sale contract, and we could go on we could spend a lot of time really diving into it. But what I would recommend first, because really, truly, that's the thing that really kind of helped it for me the most, is actually downloading one of these, print it out, or don't print it if you're not into printing things. Look at it on your iPad or whatever it is that you do, but get yourself a copy of this so you can start looking through it. And reading through it and thinking about how this pertains to your clients. That's what's really going to do it for you. And there's no class that's going to help you understand how this document pertains to this particular client. That's something you're going to have to figure out on your own. The classes will teach you the basics, they'll teach you the essentials, the fundamentals, the theory, the pillars, but you have to now apply that to your client's situation. You're not going to do that until you start thinking about what this contract means to this particular situation with your client. So if you already understand this contract in advance, now when you're having appointments with your clients, you understand what foundation you have to lay for them to understand the contract when the time comes. Whereas if you don't understand the contract, you're not going to lay the right foundation, and by the time the contract comes up, it's going to be a lot more difficult for you to effectively present and propose that contract to them. So that's why you want to understand this going into it. But look, I want to talk about the listing contracts as well, but we got to take a quick commercial break. Stick with us. I'm John Carissimo. You're watching State of Real Estate. Have you completed your post-licensing education yet? Look, I know you're probably thinking, hey, it's not my renewal deadline. I don't need to do post-licensing yet. But look, here's why you want to do post-licensing as soon as you've got your real estate license, as soon as you're able to take post-licensing. It's not just another course about arbitrary laws that you're never going to use again. It's about real-world, usable topics that'll help you grow your real estate business, to help you take it to the next level. Look, let me ask you this one question. If this course helps you close just one deal, if you get one extra deal from post-licensing, is it worth the investment? I'd say it is. We get paid pretty well, so one deal means a lot of money. Check out postflorida.com. That's postflorida.com for the full details about post-licensing. State of Real Estate. Every Friday at 12 noon Eastern Time. Grow your real estate business. You're watching State of Real Estate. Hey, welcome back to this week's episode of State of Real Estate. I'm John Christmas. The show is brought to you by the Tampa School of Real Estate. Every Friday, 12 noon Eastern Time, we're here to help you mastermind and grow your real estate business. Ring that bell, hit that button to make sure that you get notifications so you don't miss out on any of this content we have to help you grow your real estate business. If you like today's topic, make sure you also hit that thumbs up button for us. Not necessarily for us, but for you, so we know what topics and content you want to learn more about so we can make more videos about them. If you want to learn more about contracts, hit us with that like button so that way we can cover more about contracts and help you better understand that. But let's get back into it. So we've already talked a bunch about the purchase and sale contract, which, like I said, is going to be the contract that you're going to use more than anything because you will use it when you're working with buyers as well as sellers. But let's talk about the listing contract. Now, most new agents focus on buyers. Why do new agents focus on buyers? Well, number one, buyers are usually easier to find because there's no commitment from a buyer. A buyer just has to be interested for you to be able to take some action, go show them some houses and all this other type of stuff. So there's already just a larger pool of buyers, and that's in pretty much any economic climate. There are pretty much always more potentially interested buyers than there are sellers. That might change if the market swings the other way into a buyer's market where there's just a ton of sellers, but that has to go to a pretty extreme level to outnumber the amount of buyers. Just because there's a lot of people that want to purchase a home that don't own a home currently. On top of the people who do own a home currently that do want to buy another home. So typically you could find more buyers out there. Now, here's the problem of working with buyers. And it's not necessarily a problem because buyers need help as well, but here's the problem with a real estate business that focuses solely on buyers and completely ignores sellers. If you focus solely on buyers, according to the Association of Realtors, it takes 3 times as much time to close a buyer as opposed to a seller. So it's already setting up your business to not be the most efficient at making money. Which, yes, making money is important, but it's not everything. Yes, the buyers need services too and blah, 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 and all that. But here's what else the listings do. The listings help you generate buyers. Now, how does it do that? Well, when you have a listing is where a seller has agreed to allow you to market their property. And by you marketing their property, when it sells, if it sells within the time period specified in your listing agreement, you get paid a commission. And how much that commission is depends on whether you just represent the seller or if you represent the seller and the buyer. Now, if somebody else represents the buyer, some other agent in the MLS finds this property, well, there's some sort of cooperative agreement you make with that agent. You basically put it in the MLS that that the seller's willing to cooperate. Let's say it's a 6% commission and it's going to split 50-50. Meaning 3% would go to the seller's agent and the other 3% would go to the buyer's agent. Or if you represent both sides, you could potentially get both. And that's legal by default in Florida under what's called a transaction broker relationship. So anybody coming from other states wondering how we could work with both sides automatically without having to worry about dual agency or anything like that, it's because we default to transaction broker in Florida. That'll make more sense when you take your pre-licensing course. So buyers take more time. Buyers can result in referral and repeat business, but not as much as you could get from sellers. Because with that listing, when you list a property for sale, now when that property goes online, it's going to have your name, your face, if you got a picture uploaded to all these places online, next to every time this property is advertised. So everywhere this property is advertised, it's linking back to you. That's going to help you get buyers. Not just buyers for that property, but most of the time, they're not going to buy your listing, because that property is not going to be the right fit for them. They're going to keep looking. Well, if they keep looking with you because they don't have an agent already, well, you just picked up a buyer from your listing. So your listings will help you gain more business. It'll help you get buyers. It'll also help you get more listings because people will see that you're a legitimate business that has inventory, that you have houses for sale. It legitimizes you by having listings. Now, here's another reason why new agents don't excel usually at listings right off the bat. So number one, there's more buyers out there. Just the simple math of it is there's usually more buyers out there, almost always more buyers out there. Number two, you could kind of fake it till you make it with a buyer. So even if you've got a seller client, it's usually going to be easier for you as a new agent working with a buyer, because we've all seen these HGTV shows. We could turn on a light, we could unlock a door, we could open a lockbox. That's all easy stuff. That doesn't require much expertise or knowledge or information, so we could kind of wing it with a buyer. Trust me, that's what I did when I got started. I'll be honest with you. When I got started, I was absolutely winging it. Again, I had way too big of a head on my shoulders. I thought I knew everything. I said, okay, I'll wait for post-listing. I can figure this out. I want to hit the ground running. And I had to learn a lot of things the hard way, which again is why I recommend you take post-licensing, so that way you learn a lot of these lessons earlier on and you'll be better prepared for success. So it's easy to wing it working with a buyer. With a seller, I mean, your first appointment with a seller, what are you trying to do on that first appointment with a seller typically? You're trying to get the listing. I mean, you might not even know what to do at that point. You're like, okay, I've got somebody that wants to sell their house. What do I do? Well, you got to get a contract signed. Everything else doesn't matter without a contract. It doesn't matter what else you do. If there's no contract, you're not getting paid. Buyer or seller, there needs to be a contract. Now, the contract that you're going to have, the employment contract with your seller, the one you might have with a buyer is a buyer brokerage agreement, but that one doesn't typically get used too often, although it's available to you for whenever you're working with a buyer. I absolutely recommend you use the buyer brokerage agreement, but it's not quite as commonplace just because it's not necessary. Yeah, I'll leave that one there. I won't go on a tangent on that. But when we're talking about a seller, we're not listing that property for sale until we have a contract signed. Now, why is that? Well, because we're investing money up front on a listing. What are we investing up front? Well, we're already investing our time just to understand this contract, because before we could even, know what to even say, we got to know, okay, well, this is the agreement. So if I want to get them to sign the agreement, make sure I know this agreement so I could lead up and segue into this agreement, and we could just get that signed and move right along, and I could be confident about this agreement. That's the benefit of you knowing what these contracts are, is you having confidence in them and you not being afraid to pull them out. If you don't have confidence in your understanding of that contract, you're going to be afraid to pull it out. Trust me, from firsthand experience. I was terrified that my first clients would want to make an offer on a property because I had no idea what to do with the contract. I had no idea how to make an offer. I didn't know what to do. So I was freaked out, and I was subconsciously sabotaging my sales. So it sounds crazy, but looking back on it, I had no idea I was doing this, but looking back on it, I'm like, oh man, I really messed up with that. But anyway, so understanding this contract, look, here's the great part. The listing contract is way shorter. It's just a couple pages long. Way shorter, not necessarily all the addendums you'll have for the purchase contracts. And yes, there is more data collection that we're doing up front because we're having to put this info in the MLS and all kinds of things like that. A bunch of paperwork and forms that we're potentially doing, which that could be intimidating. Which is why, again, the best thing you could do to help you accelerate your real estate career is get to understand not all the contracts, but the contracts you use more than anything. So number one, I would focus on the purchase and sale contract, and number two, the listing contract. Get to know those agreements so that way you're confident in them, because you need to use those to make money. If you do not know how to use those contracts, you will not be able to make money. It's extremely important. And messing one of these up can cause you to not make money, to not be able to collect the commission, but it's very difficult to mess it up that way, especially when you understand this contract. I take that back. It's very easy to mess this up if you don't know what you're doing, but once you've reviewed this and you understand the basics of this contract, these are very difficult to mess up unless you're just being careless filling them out. And all the systems and whatnot and technology that just helps us copy and paste information over so nothing's a typo or anything like that. The contracts can be scary, I get it. But these contracts are some of the simplest contracts I've ever encountered. I've encountered a lot of contracts, not just in real estate, but in other fields as well. And these fill-in-the-blank contracts that we have are very simple. Trust me, at first they're intimidating. At first you're not going to completely understand it, but as you read through it, as you start to think through how that contract applies to this particular situation with your particular client, it's going to start to make more sense, and you're going to start to really build this better understanding of how these documents help you achieve your goals through real estate. And not just our goals, but our clients' goals as well. So look, that's the takeaway from today's episode. If you've got access already to your realtor content and documents and whatnot, download a copy of those fill-in-the-blank contracts so you can start looking through them. You don't have to read through it all right away because it's a lot of information. Trust me, legalese is very draining for your mind to be able to process this stuff. So just take it little bits and pieces, a little at a time, so that way you understand it and you get more confident with these contracts. So when the opportunity presents themselves, there's no hesitation on your part to jump in there and get that contract signed and get yourself paid. Because again, that is the first step to actually getting paid. Once you have a contract, that's like a big celebratory thing. Once it's actually signed and agreed upon by both sides, it's not a guarantee that the deal is going to go through. There's still some work to be done. But once we've got that agreement, we're on the road to closing. We just got to make sure that we don't veer off course. So look, that's about all the time we've got for today. So thank you guys for tuning in. If you've liked today's episode about contracts and you want to learn more about contracts, make sure you hit that thumbs up button so we know that you guys like contract info and you want to learn more about contracts. If you want to make sure you don't miss out on any of this information we deliver every single week, make sure you hit that bell icon so you get notifications whenever it is that we've got new content, so that way you don't miss out on all these opportunities to understand how to grow your real estate business faster, quicker, more efficiently, bigger, whatever goals it is that you're trying to achieve. These topics are pretty universally applicable one way or another. And if you've got questions about starting your real estate career, completing your renewal requirements, how that post-licensing course is going to help accelerate your real estate business, or how getting a brokerage license will allow you to open your own brokerage or anything like that, questions about any of that stuff, any renewal requirements, getting the license, you're studying for your exam, we've got advisors standing by to answer any questions you have and assist you in any way that we can. So call us up, 813-333-2676. That's 813-333-2676. You also check us out online at tampaschool.com. Again, that website is tampaschool.com. Or call us, 813-333-2676. That's all the time we've got for today. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.
The most powerful tool to study for your real estate exam is the Question Simulator from Tampa School of Real Estate. We've used our years of experience in preparing students for the Florida real estate exam to bring you the most powerful exam study tool available. In the Question Simulator, you'll be able to go directly to a particular unit so you can focus on the sections where you need the most practice. We have also included the percentages of each unit so you know which units are the most important for your real estate exam. Every question will immediately give you detailed feedback, which is almost always more important than the question or the answer themselves. After completing all the questions in a particular unit, you can go through question by question and review any that you've gotten wrong. You could also print out a report at the end of each quiz. The Question Simulator from Tampa School of Real Estate is 100% mobile compatible, so you can practice with test questions anywhere you have your phone with you. Enroll now at questionsimulator.com and get ready to pass your exam.
State of Real Estate. Every Friday at 12 noon Eastern Time. Grow your real estate business.